Hey buddies, how's it going? I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I know it's been a while since I've posted. I do apologize. Life's been getting kind of busy, so hopefully I can get back on track with posting more content more frequently. So I wrote down what my intro is going to be, so if you're watching this, please bear with me. I'm going to be reading off of my phone, which is just below the camera. Welcome to More with Stumpo, where we're going to be lacing up our spikes and diving into the world of track and field with Coach Megan Tomei, the guiding force behind Indiana University's track and field program. Join us as we sprint through insightful discussions, hurdle over challenges, and pole vault into the stories that shape champions. This is the podcast where track meets talk, and excellence is the finish line. So let's hit the track with Coach Megan. I hope you guys enjoy the episode. So Megan, go ahead and introduce yourself to all the amazing listeners that we're going to have today.
So many. My name is Megan Tomei. I am with Indiana University track and field program right now. Originally from Ohio, do some strongman competitions and stuff too. But yeah, it's basically who I am.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, how long have you been doing the track and field coaching?
I've been coaching collegiately for 6 years. Yeah, it's my 6th year. So I was at Youngstown State University beforehand, a little mid-major over in Northeast Ohio, and first year at IU.
How you liking it at IU?
I like it a lot. It's very different than what I'm used to. Obviously, Power 5 is a lot different. And we're adding in new teams now too. So we have UCLA. I know you know so much about sports.
Everything.
USC, Washington, and Oregon. So we're adding 4 of those Pac-12 schools into the Big Ten, which mainly happened because of the football and what they were doing online and everything. So the way that their TV programs were going, it worked better for them. They got more money if they went over to the Big Ten. So it's going to be a lot. There's a lot more better teams out there. Track and field is really good in all those programs too. So it's going to be difficult for us as well as obviously football is going to struggle quite a bit, but it makes it better at the same time too.
Is there a lot that you have to deal with, like your players? Do you call them your players, your students, or what do you call
athletes?
Them? Just your athletes.
Honestly, sometimes I call them kids, and people get upset with me about it, but like kind of feels like a family, and the way that you coach is kind of, even though I am younger, but I call them kids sometimes too. Student athletes.
Do you ever have issues with them, like going out and partying all the time, getting drunk? Because I know that IU is a huge party school.
Yeah.
And I never went to college. I attended one class for one semester and was asked to leave. So I obviously just resigned from it completely. But isn't it like a huge party school? So do you have to deal with all the kids like going out getting drunk and doing all that kind of stuff all the time? They're trying to come in and train?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it is. And I kind of have an idea of, I do know when they do it or not. You can tell when they come to practice what they look like and what they're doing. But I also make my workouts pretty hard, and I like to make them hard. So usually the kids that I have there know what the reason why they're training and what they're doing. And it's like if they go out sometimes during the fall, I think that it's okay to have a bit of a balance sometime. But once spring and summer and everything else hits, like it's time to train and get a bit more serious about things. Because it is a bit more difficult with track that we have an indoor and outdoor season that we're training for. So the way that the NCAA works is you have your top athletes in the country make it to nationals. And then for outdoor, you have top 48 make it to regionals. And then from regionals, the top 12 from regionals make it to nationals. So it's a bit more difficult for outdoor, but outdoor you end up bringing in more events too. So a lot more kids try to go more to the outdoor side of things than indoor too. And obviously Olympically, it's a outdoor sport.
What creates like the best athlete that can come to you? Like what attributes?
I really go for mindset over just talent. Like if you have a kid that's very talented and they don't work hard, I don't want anything to do with you. Like I've seen so much of that. It's just a wasted talent in my opinion. So I much rather have the kid that's willing to grind and willing to go the extra mile for me in that regards. So mainly mindset. Obviously now adding in some other teams, it's going to be a bit more difficult for us to score. And I think majority of us are trying to win Big Tens and try to go farther in Big Tens. So obviously that changes the game with some of the people we're recruiting too. So we're trying to recruit some obviously bigger kids, more athletic kids, more stronger, and you just move them from, 7 to 10, where before you might be moving a kid that was at a 5 to a 7. So just trying to get some
What's
more
that scoring skill from?
I'm just using more like talent level
Okay.
of athletes, of trying to get more higher talent levels to try to continue to build them even farther in their career rather than developing kids on the back end.
You want your glasses still on?
Oh, yeah.
I just looked.
You never know. Could be a little shady in here.
I was gonna see you want to pop those down and talk to me the entire time with those on.
Good.
I watched a podcast with a guy that did that. He left his glasses on the entire time.
Honestly, I have a tendency of having them on top of my head all the time anyways.
Oh no, I didn't know if they were bothering you or not. So, with one thing that I've always wondered about a lot of those athletes, like how are you? Obviously, there's recruiters, there's guys going out and watching these kids play. Like, how do you get word of them playing in schools? It's just because like newspapers are posting about them, schools are really showing them off.
Yeah, so it depends on every athlete and every sport. So obviously for football, you might see more like if your team's better, you're obviously gonna get more views. Same thing with all team sports. We're a bit easier because we're an individual sport, so I can look up rankings nationally to see where every kid in the nation is. So you can kind of go off that, and then honestly, all coaches, we all creep. So we all look at their Instagram, we look at their Facebook, we look at everything.
So they have to have good social media following.
Yeah.
What?
No, it has nothing to do with that. It's honestly just says a lot about you with like what you're willing to post. And like, if kids are posting that they're going out partying in high school, like they don't really want anything to do with that, right? But there's also some kids that you can tell that they're grinders even off their social media, and it kind of helps just get an idea of what to talk to them about too and what they're about, what they want to do. So we always look at social media, and honestly, we get an idea of what your build is like. So it's kind of like you see some kids in high school that'll throw far, and they may not throw that far in college. And obviously, the coach may not have worked well for them. That system might not have worked well, or maybe it was just what their genetic potential was. So I don't like try to point blame on any coach. I think that all programs can be good for certain individuals. But I think you definitely have to have a wider scope with some other attributes that they could have.
How do you balance like weightlifting with like a cardio type workout? Because I'm sure there's a huge.
Are you talking about for my athletes or for me?
For yours.
Okay.
For your athletes.
So we are only actually throwing for a couple seconds, right? So it's a very ballistic style training. We have to be very powerful with what we do. However, if you have no cardio whatsoever, then we can't take more reps at a higher volume, doing things more at a higher level, right? So like the more cardiovascular base that you build in the off season, the better outcome you can have because you can do more volume at a higher level. So I work a lot with Cal Dietz. Are you familiar with him? Okay, so he does triphasic training. And he incorporates a lot of cardiovascular within the actual strength and being ballistic and powerful too. So I kind of sprinkle that into a lot of my programming.
Is there like a lot of kettlebell workouts as well? Because I don't know for shot putting.
No.
There's no kettlebell workouts?
I mean, we might do like kettlebell swings.
Like swings, that's about it?
Yeah. It's not
Really?
like...
See, I was imagining in my head, I was like, oh, they probably got to do like a lot of kettlebell swings.
No, not at all.
So what are the workouts? Walk me through one of the workouts.
Okay, so we do fall conditioning first in this like fall. So like if you're a freshman coming in, we're to go through 4 or 5 weeks of fall conditioning, and then we're to go into an eccentric block. So have you ever done like eccentric work? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we do about 2.5 weeks of eccentric work, straight up eccentrics. But the way that we add some more cardio stuff is like during your rest time. So you might be doing safety squat. So you're at a heavier load with your safety squat, but then instead of just sitting down and resting, you might be doing kettlebell swings in between, or you might be doing a lunge series, or you might be doing good mornings or something else along those lines. So, but then you go back to your squat. And it allows you to be more balanced as an athlete too. So it's not just doing one exercise in between every big lift, but it's having a lot of exercises in there. So it makes an athlete very balanced and more athletic. It allows a lot with, I mean, eccentric work helps out a lot anyways. And then we'll have some auxiliary stuff after that too. Yeah. So we'll have a warm-up phase that we do beforehand, and then we'll go back and forth with the main stuff, and then we'll have some auxiliary stuff afterwards.
You've got to have like a super strong core for a lot of this.
Oh, yeah. Stuff. Well, that's the problem with a lot of coaches. They don't put enough transverse plane stuff in there. Mm-hmm. And like everything you do, you need that. And especially with throwing, because there's a lot of torque on the body. Yes. Like God did not make us to throw. No. Like you're putting yourself in some very odd positions. And, you know, like hammer throw, like have you ever seen the hammer throw?
I've seen like it from the Olympics.
Yeah.
But like I've never been to one of these competitions.
Yeah. So
I've never done it either. I've thrown a hammer. Does that count? I threw a hammer out in like Mexico.
Yeah.
Don't ask me why I was in Mexico. Oh, you can ask me why I was on a mission trip. But like they're like, let's do the hammer throws. And I'm like, I've never done a hammer throw. And
yeah.
They're like, oh, we just throw the hammer, see how far whoever makes it farthest wins. And I'm like, well, what do we win? They're like, you got a dirt over there. Like you can get the dirt.
Yeah. So the hammer throw takes a lot of, this sounds bad, but I always tell my athletes that's the only place you can be passive aggressive, because you really have to be so patient for the hammer, but then you have to be very aggressive with the hands at the same time. And it's a lot of attention, a lot of being able to react really quick too. So there's a lot to it. And there's a lot that the athletes need to overcome in a short amount of time, because obviously we only have 4 to 5 years with them. And, you know, some of these athletes are doing it for a decade or longer. So
at that point when they're coming to you guys, or even afterwards?
Well, beforehand, I mean, I got one athlete that I'm actually really excited about that she just started throwing like 2 months before she got to college. And a lot of people would kind of write her off and like, absolutely not. But
just because of her experience level with throwing?
Yeah. Yeah. So like she didn't throw at all, right? So like, how are you going to make it at a Big Ten school when you do that? But every once in a while, you'll see a kid that you're like, I see something in them. Mm-hmm. And hopefully you see that more often than not, right? Because you want to try to bring out the best of every kid and trying to highlight that and show them that there's more that you can do. But, you know, she loved IU and loved everything about the school. And she came in, you know, benching 230. And yeah, she had some really good weight room numbers.
She came in benching 230?
Yeah. Yeah. So
that's impressive.
Yeah. So, she's a strong girl, and I know that she was athletic.
Like, how tall is this girl?
She's like 6'1".
6'1". What's her weight?
Yeah. She's close to 200. She's about 195.
Really? Mm-hmm. Just stacked build.
Yeah, she's built really well. So
awesome.
When you see someone like that, and she just has a great attitude about it, mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, she can do something. And if she doesn't do anything, she's still going to be able to help the team. Mm-hmm. She still has a really good, like, grinding work ethic. So, like, you know, I took the risk of having her come on the team. She's doing awesome so far.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to see where she's going to end up going. And yeah.
What are typically the chances of one of your students, like, moving on from after college to go towards, I would assume like the Olympics would be one of them. What are some other things that they can go on to after college?
Yeah. So,
sports?
Okay. My friend, for example, mm-hmm. she, Mary, so she actually trains in Bloomington for Olympic lifting, and she just went to the Pan Am Games and got gold, but she was originally a thrower. So there's a lot of like athletic events that come off from like after throwing. And she just got silver at Worlds too. So she's doing amazing with like where she's at after throwing career, right? I chose strongman. A couple of my other friends chose Highland Games.
The Highland Games, or is that like the Irish?
Yeah.
Or Scottish? The Scottish.
Scottish.
Games?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I went to one of those games before.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so
it was up north,
all the kilts,
yes.
right? Throwing cabers
a lot
around. So fun fact, I don't know if you know this, but you're supposed to be like in a clan. If you're, so you are familiar.
So when I went, it was a thing up north, and each each group, I was like, oh, like, do we just draw straws when we get there? They're like, no, like, I wasn't even allowed to play.
Yeah.
They wanted me to play, but I was like, no, like, I'm good. I'll just, whoever needs a player, I'll just go up there and play. They're like, that's not how it works, bro. Like, you got to be a part of, like, it's like a family. Almost. It looked to me like each one of them were families.
Right.
And they all had their own names, and it was all like Scottish names.
Yep.
Everyone comes in with their kilts. I thought it was kind of weird.
Yep.
Because I'm like, these are grown men wearing dresses.
You're not supposed to wear anything underneath.
I didn't want to go around asking like, you got like underwear underneath that. So like I'm showing up in pants, and I was one of the only ones there.
You had like full on pants.
I had full on pants. Like
Oh, that's why you couldn't play.
I'm showing up to play. Like
Yeah.
I've got pants on. I got a t-shirt on. I got my glasses. I'm like, I'm ready to throw some shit. And then they're like, yeah, no. For one, you have to be a part of a group. Like they may have said clans. This was a few years back.
Yeah.
But the games looked like a ton of fun. They had like a telephone pole that they got to chuck. And then there was a couple like things where you throw in like an axe or something like that. I can't really remember. You throw some things at some boards. Salmons?
My one friend had like...
You throw like a fish?
Yeah, it's kind of like a joke, but like they threw a salmon. But like they throw a lightweight hammer, heavyweight hammer, open stone, sheath, the big like thing that looks like hay with a fork.
Yes.
Sheath, caber. I don't know if I can name all of them. They do lightweight overbar, heavyweight overbar, I believe. But yeah, two of my friends won worlds.
That is awesome.
Yeah. I know a lot of high up people.
Just names.
I'm not there yet though. So yeah. But yeah, they're doing awesome. Actually, when I was over in Scotland a couple of weeks ago, I ended up getting my friend that won worlds a kilt from over there. Yeah. It's a big deal.
Have you given it to her yet?
No, not
Him,
yet. Her, yeah.
It, they,
yeah.
them. Is that all the things there? That's the reason why I could never go to school now.
Yeah.
I could not.
That is a big thing.
It's a big dumb thing. We had one patient. I can talk about it. We had one patient that we're like, so, sir, where would you like to go to the hospital? And he's like, I'm they. I'm like,
oh.
So I'm in that zone where I'm thinking like work related. They, okay, is there another patient?
Oh,
and
right.
then he goes, no, I'm they. And I'm like, oh, bro, like I'm thinking here, like patient, all that kind of stuff. So it got me thrown off. But for us, like I had to sit there and ask my chief about it. For us, it's a different thing when it's a medical problem. And
exactly.
You're sitting here talking about a lot of that, but it just confuses me, and I'm still learning it. But it's very confusing to me when they're sitting there trying to use their gendered language.
You know, honestly, even from the same side of like a medical standpoint, if let's say they are transitioning or something, like you actually kind of need to know that if they're pumping in different hormones or something like that with what you're doing too.
We had a transgender patient that kept going into seizures all the time. And it was the medication that he was on, and it was a he to a she, and he wanted us to refer to himself as a her, but we can't. Like we could say, we would just ask, "What's your name?" He would tell us his name, but we have to treat him as what he was, because if he's
right,
there's certain medications that we can give that if he's on like erectile dysfunction medication, that if we give him nitro, it can kill him.
Right.
So it's like, we need to know this kind of stuff. So there's the difference between that we have to be, there's obviously a respectfulness, and you have to be honoring to that person's emotions and personalities, but also it's life and death at points. So where it's like, okay, we need to cut this out, like draw this away. I need to know about you biologically, so that way we can get a full discussion of what's really going on. So it's a very difficult spot to be in, because I know like people listening in might think like, oh, these guys are jerks. Like, no, but we just, the medicines that we have could kill this person. So we have to be very straightforward into it.
Yeah.
And that's why, to me, it's like, it's hard to separate that from work than going out in public, which I just ask what their name is. That's
yeah. Speaking of which,
sure.
I actually feel like I was listening to another podcast earlier, and they were asking like the one thing that strength conditioning is really leaving out right now. And I feel like, you know, we talk a lot about different programs and different ways to accomplish things, talk about our goals and mentality, right? But, and even the nutrition side of things, right? We talk about nutrition and even recovery. But from a female standpoint, I feel like no one really talks about our hormones. and talks about like how that plays into effect with especially a strength sport and what we're trying to accomplish too. And one of my really good friends is like, she's aware of this issue and she's a researcher, and she does a phenomenal job doing especially research for females that are in like strength-based sports.
Are you talking about like when they're on their like periods when
Sure.
they're lifting?
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about here?
But even like, you know, I went to a seminar one time and they were trying to explain men's hormones and they viewed it as a light switch. And then they showed female hormones and it was like wires all over the place. And it's like...
It's where their brains work too. I don't get it.
And it's all chaotic, right? So it's like, it's very overwhelming and there really hasn't been that much research on it to begin with.
Explain to me how that works then. Because I'm a guy.
Yeah.
Like, I can go into the gym and I don't take pre-workout. I know for me, it's just like, I just got to lift it. And then how does that work for a woman?
You know, that's interesting. I appreciate that guy actually asked me that. I feel like, you know, you can obviously be tired when you're like around that time. This is weird talking about during this podcast, but when you're like,
It's not that weird.
Well, I've just never talked about it like formally before, but like when you're about to, you know, start your period, you have PMS, right? And like, you might be really tired during that time. You might have cramps. You might have all that stuff. And you might have mood swings. But like with mood swings come a bunch of chemical imbalances and hormone responses. And, you know, there's charts to show like difference in strengths and difference in cortisols and different like there's so much going through the female body that can be very difficult through that process of like, oh, I'm trying to max out during this time, or I have a huge competition during this time. And that just so fact in lines with like the first day of my period. And like, it's a whole thing from there too. So, and like I have PCOS. So it's polycystic ovary syndrome. Have you heard of that?
I have not actually heard
Yeah.
of that.
So it's a syndrome where you have cysts on your ovaries, basically.
Oh,
But it actually helped me out because it helps with your testosterone, like helps raise your testosterone with it.
wow.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool, you know, in a sense, but like also not good in a lot of other senses. But you know, there's also aspects like that like women will have more problems with sometimes than men. And like, I've been with a couple athletes, one like while I was in school and another while I was coaching, that had like horrible periods, and it really messed up their lifting, and like they were out for a while with it. Yeah, so it's like
I couldn't imagine.
And like, okay, so for if you do have PCOS and you have a cyst burst, it's awful.
It's miserable.
Yeah.
It is miserable. My sister had that.
Yeah.
Pretty sure she had a cyst burst. We had to rush her to the emergency room.
Yeah.
I thought she was faking it the entire time. I'm like, this is some BS. This is nothing. And then she's, and then
it's super painful. Yeah. So, you know, there's obviously all that stuff when it comes to training too, that can be a lot more hairy to kind of go into. But I think with training in general, you shouldn't be naive to any aspect, right? Like, so I came from a D2 school where my coach had to know and do absolutely everything. So he was your nutritionist. He did a lot of the AT work. He did a lot of the mental stuff. He did like soft tissue stuff. Like he was doing everything, as well as a strength conditioning coach and the throws coach. So I'm used to that background where you kind of have to know a little bit of everything. But I feel like that made me a better coach because I do have to know a little bit of everything from that background. Where now when you're at a Big Ten, you have someone that's a nutritionist, you have someone that's your AT, you have all these people in line for you where you don't have to do anything. But I feel like if that was my role as a coach and I was naive to all those other facts, it's not going to make me a better coach because I need to know all those other alignments in order to get the best results.
What type so when these athletes come to you guys and they're going through their training, and what type of rehabilitation do you put them through? Do you guys have like an on-site doctor or a chiropractor or a masseuse therapist, and then like sauna work, ice work, like
all the above, basically?
You have all of that stuff?
Yeah.
So what's their routine on that then?
It depends on each individual and like what they need and what they have. Also each institution and like what they have at that time too, right? So like right now we don't have a chiropractor. I had a chiropractor at my previous institution. So it just kind of depends on that, but we do have a doctor that's there basically all the time. So if you come to me, you know, and you're like, hey, my ankle is messed up, I think I need to get an MRI. Well, you know how it would normally go. Hey, you have to come back, do this rehab for a couple weeks, get an x-ray, come back, do some more rehab. And then if you're still having issues, then we'll order an MRI. There, it's like if you tell them that morning, you'll get one in the afternoon. So that's a perk of Big Ten too, right? So they have that accessible to them. They have the stuff in the AT room is pretty insane. A lot of places have Alter-Gs now. Have you ever heard of that?
What is that?
So it's a treadmill, and you put on this like suit kind of thing around your waist, and you zip into it, and you can say, hey, I've been messing with the ankle issue, but I still want to feel some of my like running patterns. I'm only going to run on 20% of my body weight. And it fills up with air, and it's almost like you're just floating, kind of like you're on the moon, right? And you're just running in your same pattern, but only 20%. So it's not hurting you at all. So we have that, but then we also have one that actually goes underwater. So it's a treadmill underwater, and there's cameras coming out. So we can look to see exactly how your stride is, how you're striking the ground with everything. We actually just got this new one too, that's an insole in your shoe, and it shows like how you're stepping, how you're striking the ground, your force that you're putting in the ground, which I like to see how much force that you're going to be able to put through the ground too. So like
as you're performing your
so there's all of that kind of stuff. Like we obviously have hot tubs, cold tubs. A lot of the kids like that because it's kind of easy. But there's so many modalities over there. It can be a bit overwhelming with everything, right? Like we have access to everything now, right? So I try to just kind of like sprinkle some ideas into athletes. Like, hey, maybe you should go try cupping tomorrow. Maybe you should go try dry needling. Maybe you should try this or that. You know, because like when I was in school, we didn't have that accessible to us.
Have you ever tried dry needling? How was your result with it?
It works really well for me.
Did it?
Yeah, but I've heard like completely different responses for different people.
I've had it done on me and it did not work.
Yeah, I've heard that like quite a bit. I don't know if it's like partially the person. I think it's partially the person, but I also think it might be who may also be dry needling you. Yeah.
Well, we had for at my work, we have the guy who used to work for the Colts, and he's working for us now at our department. It's Forte Sports.
Okay.
And we utilize them a lot, which they've been great. So he was doing dry needling. To me, it would like help in the moment, and then right after he pulls them out, I would go right back to pain in my lower back. Yeah. And then finally figured out some of the area where I'm having issues at. I've got like all these knots that run across like my lower part of my back with the muscles that swing out, and I've just got a ton of knots in there. But like the dry needling part, I thought would break apart some of that, but it didn't do anything.
So what'd you find for results?
So the results right now on it are he named all the muscles to me and stuff like that. I know the piriformis is one of them. It's really tight. Super tight piriformis, and then also the muscles that run across like the spine at the very bottom that go across like the rear part of your pelvis, they were just all knotted up. So like when I squat down,
did you do like a butt wink?
A butt wink?
That's what they call it. So like when you're at the bottom of your squat and your pelvis turns under?
Tilts to one side so it's uneven. Yes. So mine does that. So if I go into a mirror and I come down, I'll do it towards the camera that way you can see. When I come down when I'm doing a squat, it doesn't come straight down and then straight back up. It comes down a decent amount and then it shifts to one side like that. And then I come back up and I can feel it when I'm coming down on it. I could feel it as I'm squeezing because I'm driving my heels into the ground because I'm trying to focus on glutes and then a little bit of hammies, but not too much, but mainly glutes. I'll feel it, and then I notice that one side's getting larger, obviously, because it's getting more of the development in it. And then once I saw it in the mirror, I'm like, oh, this is a problem. So since he's been working on that, basically just rubbing those muscles and breaking that apart, I've noticed that distance has been kind of brought back to normal now.
Okay.
But I did the drive. I've done all sorts of things, and I even had back surgery on it. So
Oh, wow.
So like I had back surgery. I
You
did
didn't
the
have back
cupping.
surgery because you had knots, so.
No, not knots. No, I had back surgery because of a disc. But they're thinking because a lot of that stuff that was happening in my lower back, it's all in that same area, that it possibly could have caused more issues going up because of the deviation in my hip. So like I know like if I lay down, one leg is shorter than the other. Well, it's really just my hip that's raised up.
So when you had that back issue, do you know what caused your disc, or was it just kind of going through natural life?
Everybody else tells me it's from lifting heavy, but I've had back issues since I was a kid.
Okay.
So for me, it's just always been not being like super cautious on hamstring development and stretching and glute and abdominal stuff. And then when I went through a lot of my training in the beginning when I was lifting, I was focused really strongly on my form, but I was also throwing a lot of weight at the time. And it just didn't help having a very unhealthy back. And my brother's got the same back as I do. And I was lifting earlier than he was, and he was still having issues with his back. So it was just, I think it was a genetical thing. I think it was going to happen regardless. I just made it happen a little bit faster.
Yeah. And sometimes there's a lot of things that you can do within your training to look a little bit differently. And I worked with a chiro that I'm really close with that knows a lot about the hammer throw too. He's a really good athlete. So he taught me different ways of squatting and different ways to kind of help that syndrome. So I also had a disc out of place, and I really didn't want to choose a surgery route.
Yeah, it's not the greatest.
So I went to basically everything that I could to not go that route. And I feel like I've learned a lot over that time period. So it was one of those time periods where I was doing really well athletically, but I knew that I wanted to come back too. So I learned from a chiro to do different breathing techniques to help with that. And my back was so bad, I would do these breathing techniques, just like lying on the ground breathing, and it would crack my back. And it was so relieving. So a lot of times if you have too much of an arch in your low back too, your vertebrae will push down at the wrong angle if you arch back, and it pushes against that disc, which pushes against the nerve, which is what you end up feeling too, instead of having it where your disc are more straight on, right, with your vertebrae. So then that disc is more in there and not just squeezing out, pushing towards nerves. So I was doing it wrong for a while, where I was squatting with too much of an arch, and even in the hammer throw, if you have too much tension pulling you forward and you don't have your hips underneath you, you're going to have a lot of low back issues. So I was doing that wrong on top of lifting wrong, and it caused a bunch of issues with that. Same thing, I was trying to go too heavy at the same time too. But you have goals, so you're trying to, go after it. Yeah.
I had no use of my right leg.
Yeah.
So I couldn't move my right leg. I had to for 8 months.
Yeah, it gets kind of scary.
Oh yeah, it was horrible. So I was still working.
Oh
so
man.
I couldn't take off work. It was a whole situation with insurance and everything. Insurance is a scam. And it was absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
And I hate when we've had patients that have had back pain. So I obviously jumped straight on in because it's I can relate. And so I had a bulging disc. And then, so they ended up just doing a laminectomy, discectomy, laminectomy. So they just cut it right off the back. And it was between L4 and L5. And right now I found out I've got L5 S1 now.
Okay.
And then L3, L4. So those ones are one of them's completely deflated. It's just straight on down.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, cool, it's fused by itself. And then they're like, that's not the greatest thing in the world. I'm like, I don't feel pain, so I'm going to just keep going, do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I had no use of the right leg, so I couldn't do anything for the longest time. I lost some serious muscle mass in my legs because I had to stop lifting. That was the worst part about it. I was more upset the fact that I lost muscle mass in it.
Yeah.
So when you're having your students, your athletes, your kids, dealing with them having a loss, not being able to break their own PR, how do you deal with that as their coach with trying to get them back on track?
Mm-hmm. Well, our season's so long, and it's very hard to obviously peak a lot, right? So I try to keep things very consistent to allow for them to have the best that they can and be a more linear approach than dig them down too deep and then try to dig back up and have like the alter effect, right? Of just having them PR for conference and nationals and things along those lines. But it really depends on the athlete, because I think it's really important for the coaches to have a good communication with their athletes and kind of know how they work and know how they interact with one another, to see what their why is too. Obviously helps out a lot too. So if they're going through a difficult time with, not PR, you have to look at things differently too. So I have 3 different programs going out to my athletes, and then it even gets more dissect based off of what they're doing from there. So it's very individualized. So if something's not going right, I take a look outside the circle and be like, okay, is it something that we're doing physically in the weight room? Is it something that we're doing technically? Is it something that we're doing mentally? Like, is it something completely outside of it, right? Because there's so many reasons why you couldn't be performing well. It might be they broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend. It might be that, stuff going on at home. So I think it's important to kind of try to look at it at every angle and see what might be going on. And sometimes it takes a second for them to tell you. But once you kind of know about it and you go through that process, then you kind of get them back on the right track and going in the right direction again. And I think it really helps out just to have those open conversations with them to help build their blueprint too, right? Like, I'm here to use as a resource, and I will continue to learn, because I don't know everything. But I like learning from the best of the best, right? So I've worked with 4 world record holders within the throws and a lot of other Olympians that were phenomenal resources for me. So I just kind of, use what they've given me as resources. And I was kind of build off that. Like, we were talking I was talking with another coach the other day, and he was like, I used to do stuff that I just saw from like other programs that were successful, but I didn't really know the why of why I was doing that. And that kind of shook me the wrong way. Like, why would you just hand someone a piece of paper when you weren't sure what the reasoning was for it, right? So like, I'm more of the kind of coach that's, if you're going to teach me something, I'm going to question you. And it's not because I'm questioning what you're doing. I just want to learn why. And then we can kind of take a step approach from that. And thankfully, I've been with really good coaches that realize I'm not trying to question what they're doing, but just learn. And they really helped me out be better coaches for that reason. And I think I'm a better coach for that reason as well, too. So I like to learn more of like the research behind it. And that's why I like to learn more about like the body and the mental aspect and how we can make like the best athlete possible and actually reach you to your max potential.
What is the most interesting part of the body that you find to be the most attractive to what you have your athletes train on?
The spine.
Ooh.
Yeah.
If you got a good spine.
Yeah.
You can go a long way.
Yeah. Even like rotational movements with this, like the thoracic too. Mm-hmm. Like the spine means a lot, and how you can move around that. And, like when I coach, I look a lot for stability. And
which aspect of stability? Like just...
So like you can only go as fast as you are stable. So if I'm asking an athlete to just blow through positions, that's going to mean nothing. So if I can teach them how to be stable, and I work from typically the ground up within that position, and so I even work on their feet strength, right? So like you have strong feet and strong ankles, because I'm asking you to be on single support and turn your entire body weight on just one foot. That's a lot, right? So if you don't have good foot strength, you're just going to collapse in the middle. You're not going to be able to hold that arch up. So working on small things to help with like stability in that way, so then you can actually allow for maximum potential in the throw, right? So like for us, the only thing that really matters is the speed of the implement when you let go of it and the angle. That's the only thing that matters. The ball has no idea what your technique looks like, no idea how tall you are, your ethnicity, your race, whatever. It only knows how the angle and the speed that you release it. So that's why you see bunch of different techniques, and the implement still goes far. So I think that's why it's important to highlight athletes' strengths and still focus on their weaknesses to build that up while highlighting their strengths.
What are some of the ways to strengthen your feet and ankles?
So Cal Dietz does a method where you basically have like a squat belt and you tie it to the rack and you push your knee over your toe and you go into like a extension there with your foot.
Like stretching the calf, basically? Is that what we're trying to achieve on that?
Trying to put as much force through the ground with your foot, basically. A lot of force.
I was like driving down.
Yeah. Yeah. So like they used to do it, they call it spring ankle series. So they used to do it where like someone was like pushing down on you and you kind of raise your foot up as you go and you just do one side at a time. And he actually changed it a bit to make it better where you have a belt squat around you and you're pulling against a rig. So you ultimately can push as much force as you want. You're not going anywhere.
Do you guys do like a lot of static exercises or is it just mainly eccentrics?
No, so we're just doing eccentrics right after fall conditioning. Then we did isometrics. Okay. After that, it's more power phases after that. But I do it a bit differently too. So Cal does a great program of you running like a sprint of a 20 meter and he'll see the acceleration you had from 0 to 10 meters and 10 to 20 meters. And based off that, he can tell you if you need isometrics, power, or speed. So I kind of fall back into that core category along with viewing their ball cycle and where they are with their heavy ball and light ball and what they need more there.
How much do those things weigh?
So the guy's comp ball is 16 pounds for the shot and the hammer, and then the weight's 35 pounds.
What are some of the rules whenever you go to do a shot put?
You have to throw within the sector and you can't hit over the toe board. And technically you're supposed to leave the ring when the ball lands and you're in control.
So I leave the little box that you're in?
Yeah, the circle, but yeah.
Is it a circle?
It's a circle.
I thought it was a box.
It's a circle.
Shows you how much I know. I'm an idiot. I couldn't do any of that stuff. Like I throw a baseball now, my shoulder hurts.
Yeah.
Like I can't.
You know, I had a freshman that came and he threw a football and his whole, it was so bad. We had to rush him to the emergency room. His shoulder was just out. Yeah, he was gone for the whole year.
I have a cousin that played Major League Baseball that he was a pitcher. He was a relief pitcher.
Oh, wow.
And he ended up having to do shoulder surgery when he was in high school. And and obviously I feel like I got the same shoulder as he does. Cause like I told one of the guys, cause I used to be a pitcher as well growing up.
Oh, okay.
And I loved playing baseball, but when I went to go throw the ball, I was like, I could throw that football really far, and I could at the time when I was throwing. So I go to throw it. I'm at the firehouse, and I chuck that ball, and it went pretty far. It went over the creek and everything. And afterwards, that's
creek?
Really
you mean pond? No,
it was a lake. I threw it over the mountains over there. And so I threw it over the creek, and it wasn't standing just on the other side of the creek. I was standing at our old firehouse at the bay doors, and I threw it over the creek. I couldn't tell you how far it was. But after I did that, I was like, oh, God, that was great. And they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm going back inside. I'm going to go lay down. Like, I tore my shoulder up. Like, the next day, I couldn't lift it or nothing. So I couldn't imagine being an athlete and, like, going out and doing something else. There was a professional bodybuilder that was competing in the Olympia that he would ride horses on his farm. And people were telling all the other bodybuilders were telling him, like, dude, don't be riding horses when you're getting ready for a comp.
Right.
And he was on video. It was actually on one of the documentaries. You can watch it. It's called, I think it's Iron Gym or something like that. And the horse rears back and kicks, and then
my gosh,
the horse fell on top of him, and he was out. Like
he was
out of the comp.
I know when I was younger, they always said don't do like softball movement with volleyball, because like the spiking motion versus throwing motion. I never asked like any chiro or any other doctor after that of like how real that statement was, but I know as a kid everyone always used to make that statement of like, oh no, it's really bad for the shoulder to do both.
I think like really anything like is when you get older, like your body's going to start falling apart. Like
don't tell me that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm going to tell you all the stories. Then we have patients that like when you go to pick up old ladies, like we go to pick up old ladies all the time and they're the sweetest and I love them so much. And they always have cookies and they always have treats. And we have this one old lady. Oh my God. she always is prepared for us because her husband's diabetic and he goes into a little diabetic issues. And she's always got food like bread and stuff made in the freezer. So that way when we come there, she runs into the freezer and she grabs out a loaf of bread. That
Oh,
she
how
made.
sweet.
Oh, and it's so good. You let it thaw out. It tastes amazing. It's still moist for some
Yeah.
reason. I don't know. But when you go to pick them up, you talk about like your body degrading, your bones degrading. When you go to pick up an old lady, you cross their arms over. You pick up anybody like this. Cross their arms over. And I reach around, I grab one wrist, I reach around and grab the other wrist. And then when you go to stand up, you stand up with them. You'll feel their bones bending as you're standing up. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be like this person one day. I'm going to be here at this spot.
You know, they talk about the aging process versus muscle mass. So the more muscle mass you have, it kind of helps with that process. Also, grip strength is also correlated with that.
Really?
Yeah. So keep
With
up your
the
grip
tendons
strength.
and all that stuff? Mm-hmm. Which, do you know what your number's at?
I don't right now. I have no idea. Yeah.
How do you not know?
You know yours?
Kind of. Well, it wasn't a digital one. So like it was on an actual, I was over getting some tests ran and then I saw that they had one as a pinch like a gun. And I don't like those ones. I want the other one that's got the digital screen that stops so I can get the number in my head. I don't remember where it was at.
See? You don't remember any.
I don't remember.
You should have one in here. So like
Ooh.
your guests come in, if they don't reach a certain max, like you probably shouldn't have a podcast with
What
them.
I do challenge, if they have to get over 100 pounds.
Yeah.
You have to. If you can't, you're too weak. I did tell one of my bosses yesterday, I was like, I told him what my bench was the other day. I don't do 1 rep maxes.
Okay.
I cannot do those. I'm terrified of tearing up my shoulders or
Yeah.
I don't even do flat bench ever.
Really?
I do not like flat bench.
So then what kind of bench were you talking about?
Incline, decline,
Oh,
and
okay.
then with dumbbell bench. But I did walk into the gym and I walked up to it and there were some of my buddies were there and they said, and they had 315 on and I'm like, oh, you boys warming up? Like, obviously you got to talk trash to them, like kind of talk them up a little bit. And they're like, oh no, man, we're getting close to the end. I was like, all right, well, I hope you guys enjoy it. And they were just asking me like, how many times do you rep this? I was like, I don't know, 2 or 3 times. Like I don't flat bench. And I got on there. I did it more than I thought I was going to.
Yeah.
But I had stopped because I was like, I'm going to tear. I'm 30 years old now. Like I'm getting,
You're getting
to
up
that
there.
age. I'm about to get like an AARP card. And I'm about to be on Medicare here soon. And I'm going to be dying. And so I'm making this. So
everyone can remember me.
remember me, please. And it was just, but seeing that and then feeling your body getting older, like I love watching younger athletes because it's the potential of what humans can be. I truly think that for athletes, as you get older, you don't really like, you have to completely change your direction once you're getting older in athleticism. It's not going to be and I'd say it's more endurance. Like you change more of your endurance at that point.
Yeah.
Some
So
strength.
I feel like I've been around some like high end athletes that are also older it actually helps me because I see the way that they train and they're still at a high level, right? So my coach in college was a 4-time Olympian in the hammer throw. And he ended up going after the world's masters world record, sorry. And he broke that. So
awesome.
so we were with him the whole time he was training for that. And then my strongman coach, he's done phenomenal. I mean, the guy can pull like 900 pounds. Like he's stupid strong, right?
Like deadlift 900?
Yeah.
Good Lord.
And so in strongman, you have OSG and Clash that are like 2 of the world strongman games. And he's shown up at both of those and performed really high there. And he's also brought a lot of athletes there as well. And he's over 40, so he could go in the masters category, but he stays with the younger guys and he does the cut and does the entire process of being with that group too, which is kind of cool to watch him train and see the way that he moves and things along those lines too. But he still trains really hard.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's not very common to see.
No.
Somebody at his age.
It's not, but like, you know, even my one other friend that I was talking about for Highland Games, she still competes too.
What's her age?
She's early 40s. Yeah.
If she was here, we'd say like late 20s.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She probably
she's
looks
like
like she's
early
in her late
40s.
20s,
I think she might be, I don't know, for early 40s. We'll leave it at that. Yeah. But she was awesome too, and she actually beat cancer as well.
No way.
Yeah,
Congratulations. That is awesome.
Yeah, she beat cancer, and then she went to the Olympic trials, and
After that?
yeah. Yeah, she wore a shirt
Really?
that said I kicked cancer's ass and everything. So
That is so cool.
yeah, it was definitely cool. So it's fun to kind of be around those kind of people too. Like
Yeah.
I was very big into learning about like you are the 5 people that you hang around the most. So which is hard with coaching because you move all the time, right? And you're in different areas, and some of the people that I are great mentors of mine, great friends, don't live in this area. So granted, there's a lot of great people in this area too that I'm really happy that I fell upon. But, it's trying to stay connected with those people sometimes too, and being able to go learn from them and lean on them sometimes too. But sometimes conversations help too,
It's really tough to find solid people. Those types of people that you find out are just like once in a lifetime types of friends.
Yeah.
And when you're going through something and they stick with you and they've got your back, like that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
Like it's very rare. You find out when you're going through something hard, you find out who your friends are.
Oh, 100%.
And you find out who the ones that truly are, that are with you either for whatever benefits that you give them for any reason, whether it's by money, by any type of status, any type of power that you have, being in a position that like, if I 100% agree with you. Is you are who you surround yourself with. And if you're hanging out with guys and gals that don't have much going on for them, you're too young to be wasting your time on people who aren't investing in you as well.
Yeah. Show me your 5 best friends and I'll show you your future. It's so true. And I think that, like you said, like time is very precious with what we have here. And obviously as we get older, you kind of realize that even more with how you delegate things. So that's why I also like a lot of who I pick on my team, right? Because I spend a lot of time with those athletes. So it's like, I don't mind athletes that question me and like want to grow too. I want you to grow as well. So if you have questions about things and I don't know the answer, I'm going to find it out. So I'd rather have kids that like push me to higher levels too. Granted, I did that myself for a long time. So
you have to have that competitive nature.
Yeah, for sure. And like the other thing, things are always changing, right? And there's always so much more stimulus going on, right? Like, so if you're driving down the street and you have your music blaring and you're texting while driving and you have the windows down, like how much stimulus is coming at you during that time? So I think that there's another art to this whole training system, which is dealing with the real world and what's going on with today and learning how to maneuver as a coach to train differently. Like the way that we train now and the way we trained 20 years ago is completely different based off the stimuluses that are going around us. So I think that's really important. Like think about how often we have a screen around us. You think about like what's going on with our eyes and our like how people's breaths are more shorter now and how like things are, even our sleep cycle and how we're sleeping and how much caffeine we're taking in, let alone the demands that we're having from everyone else around us. So America definitely does it a bit different, and a lot of the ways that we do it's awesome and amazing. But I think that there's some other things that may help with our longevity and may help with our quality in the long run too.
How do you see the future of training going?
I think if people are you like asking me specifically or like in general?
In general.
Okay. I think
let's go with both.
Okay. I think in general, if people aren't being more aware of what's going around them and have a global viewpoint, I think it could go really south really quick. I think there's some like really older men, I hate to put it that way, but that's usually who's in that seat. Older men that are very stuck in their ways and they're like, well, we did this back in the 60s and we're going to continue doing it that way. And it's like, okay, well, things have changed and there's a lot better ways to do it out there. And there's a lot safer ways to do it out there. And there's ways that we can get quicker results too. So I think it depends on how that looks. I think that you have to think more globally about a lot of things. And I think that you have to educate yourself on everything around you. Like you have to know a little bit about nutrition. You don't have to be a nutritionist, but you have to know somewhat about it. You have to know somewhat about your gut health, right? Like the more you know about some of that little stuff, the better athletes that you're going to bring in. The more you go talk to higher people, and the more that people stop listening to just Instagram. There's a lot of bad shit out there on Instagram, right? And that people are just putting out to put out just because they want a lot of followers, and they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. So I think that you definitely have to, like, no one really likes reading research, but like learn, or, you know, learn from those that actually are speaking the truth about a lot of stuff, which can be difficult to deviate what's truthful and what's not. But I think that there's a lot of knowledge out there, and some's just trash. So to be more global about things and try to look at good research and to try to grow a bit more that way with things.
One question that was popping up to me a couple times was, how much does elevation and weather, like in the air, like humidity, all that type of stuff, play a factor into when your athletes are performing?
That's more like running.
Just more running?
Yeah, that's more running. I mean, obviously, so our big thing is more like the discus and like how much air we get with the discus depending on. So like a lot of times teams will go out to like the West Coast where they can get a good wind. Sometimes in Texas you'll get a good wind. We were in Florida for regionals. We had a good wind there for like a left-handed thrower, but not a right-handed thrower. So like sometimes it just depends on like that. Altitude doesn't play a huge part for us. It's more the runners, especially distance runners. But like sprinters are really big with running where it's hot, where we can kind of do a little bit when it's colder out, but like they're scared of hamstrings and stuff like that too. So a bit different.
I'm scared of my hamstrings too.
I'm scared of my Achilles.
Oh,
I've seen some like people rupture their Achilles.
I've got some nasty things I could tell. Oh man. So, well, I can't really. Well, I could.
Yeah.
I could. So I know what they look like when you're like exposed, because we just had recently had a vehicle accident where like his whole elbow was exposed and everything.
Man.
And, like his arm was off, actually. It was completely off. It was just hanging by some skin, and then his ankles were off, hanging by the skin too. It is wild looking at the human body, the anatomy and the musculature, tendons, fats, the bones sticking out. The bones are white. Bones are very white. They look like bones, like in drawings. Like exactly what you think. It's wild to see on somebody.
Yeah, I've done a few.
Especially when they're alive.
Obviously, that's completely different. I've done like cadaver labs.
Yeah, I've never done a cadaver. I've always wanted to do a cadaver.
Yeah,
lab.
I'm surprised you guys haven't.
No. We've done training. You see videos and stuff like live births and all that stuff. I was very close to delivering a baby. Very close. Like she was popping, and I was like, this is it. Like she's gonna name it after me and everything.
Oh wow,
this is gonna be awesome. And she held on to that thing until.
She didn't want you to deliver it. No,
I was too excited. No,
wasn't it?
No, it was her first child, so it just took, her labor was a lot longer.
Oh,
but
gotcha.
I was super excited for it. I was ready to catch.
Yeah,
I was really ready for it. But I have not done cadavers. I know when you go to paramedic school, I think you do cadavers in paramedic school. I would really like to.
Yeah,
I'd like to take a little trip. We know we have a funeral home down the road from us that I know when they're burning bodies, at least.
Yeah,
because all their chimneys are going through.
Oh man, that's kind of,
it smells weird.
Morbid.
Not really. Whenever you pass a funeral home and their chimney's rocking, it's usually because they're cooking.
That does make sense. Yeah, I actually, as odd as it sounds, I do like learning from cadavers. I'm more like hands-on with that. So it's fun to actually kind of see it in life and not just see it from a screen.
Play with it too and see how it works.
Yeah, I really like learning about the fascial system and growing with that. So when I had a lot of back injuries, I went with fascial stretch therapy. So I had a lady up in Cleveland that really helped me out a lot, and we became good friends afterwards. But that was tremendous for my back. And like, I mean, there were days where I couldn't walk, and like I went to her. I literally was like rolling to get to her, and I felt fine after I left her. So I ended up getting certified in that because I wanted to learn more about what they did and how that helped me, and I didn't want my athletes to have the same experience.
I guess I could take back. We get like dead pigs and stuff.
Oh, okay.
We're about to have I think next week we're doing pig lungs.
Oh, that's fun.
Which would be really cool. Pig lungs and a throat.
Oh, nice.
We've had brain. We're gonna have brain, I think. Which I'm excited.
Yeah.
About pig brain, which is weird. But we are at that hour mark. You want to go ahead and close this out?
I guess so. I do have a couple calls to make with recruits.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come up here and do an episode with me.
Yeah, for sure. This was fun.
Check out more episodes of More with Stumpo on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you can listen to an episode on a podcast. Just go ahead and follow me on Instagram at More with Stumpo Podcast and hit me up. Let me know who next do you want me to try to talk to. I could reach out to them, see if they'd like to come on the podcast and share a little bit of their story. Maybe we can learn something together. So I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas if I don't post before then, and a Happy New Year.